I was transferred to the Jungle District after spending most of my career in city patrol. Nothing dramatic caused the shift, just my own request. After 10 years of neon streets, angry traffic, I wanted a change of pace, a quiet post, less noise in the mind. My superior handed me the Badron file and said, "One road, one bridge. You'll be the only unit for miles. Should be peaceful." I nodded, packed 2 uniforms, a book, and an old thermos, and drove out without telling many people. I figured solitude would help me settle the restlessness inside me. The first night on Route 43 was uneventful. A narrow blacktop ran through thick jungle on either side, trees pressing in like silent witnesses. My duty was to watch traffic at the bridge checkpoint, a rusting metal structure that creaked in the wind and hung over a silent river. The post was nothing more than a roadside shed and a stretch of cones. I logged in at 11:58 p.m., parked the cruiser beside the shed, and watched the fog collect over the trees. Only one bike passed that night, nothing else. I went home with clean pages in the logbook and thought, maybe this is what peace looks like. On my 4th night there, at exactly 1:20 a.m., I saw headlights moving through the mist. I leaned forward, notebook in hand. A white van came slowly across the bridge, engine humming quietly. I noted the plate, speed, and company logo, Fresh Meats. The driver didn't even glance at me as he passed. It felt routine, automatic. I scribbled the details and moved on. But when the van passed again, the next night, same time, same pace, I paused. That kind of timing didn't feel casual. It felt deliberate. I didn't do anything then, but I remember thinking, who the hell is ordering meat out here? After that, I started preparing differently. I parked the cruiser at a slight angle facing the road, so I could see him coming through the trees. I adjusted my seat to be more upright, alert. I cleaned the spotlight, just in case. The 6th night, I waited outside the car, arms crossed, breath fogging in the cold air. At 1:17 a.m., I checked my watch again. I started to feel something, a subtle itch in the gut. And right at 1:20, there it was again. Those low beam lights cutting through the mist, tires whispering over gravel. I watched the driver carefully this time. Same man, same stare, same van. That night, I didn't sleep after my shift. I lay in my cot thinking about it. There were no homes past that bridge, no side roads, no shops, just jungle. So where was he going? And why deliver meat at that hour every single night? It didn't sit right with me. I decided to stop him. Not arrest him, just ask some questions. I wanted to pick a night when everything felt just right. I chose the following night. I arrived early, ran through the steps in my head. I checked the time on my phone, adjusted my belt, rehearsed my tone. Casual, not accusatory. That night, I stood near the center line, flashlight in hand, body angled toward the bridge. The jungle was quiet. Even the usual cricket chirps felt faint. I checked my watch again, 1:15 a.m. My heart beat a little faster than usual. Then I saw the glow through the trees' soft yellow lights floating in the fog. I stepped forward slowly, keeping my expression neutral. The van slowed as it neared me. The driver rolled down the window, and I saw him clearly this time. Middle-aged, tired eyes, plain clothes, cap low. "Evening, officer," he said calmly, almost friendly. I asked for ID. He handed it over with no hesitation. I read the license twice, then asked, "What's the delivery for?" He shrugged. "Same place every night. Woman lives out here, pays in cash. Old, quiet. Been delivering to her for a year." I nodded like I believed him, but something inside me pulled tight. "Strange place for meat deliveries," I said, watching his face. He looked away briefly and replied, "Yeah, but it's a job. Don't ask questions, just follow the address." His voice was practiced, like he'd said it many times. I asked to see the meat. He opened the back doors himself. Cold air drifted out. Crates lined the floor, sealed, labeled. It all looked normal. I tapped the side of one crate. It gave a solid thud. "Looks standard," I said aloud, though my mind screamed otherwise. I thanked him, told him he was good to go. But the moment he pulled away, I knew I wasn't done. I stood there for 10 minutes after the van vanished into the trees. I lit a cigarette with shaky hands. The story didn't fit. That much meat, that much regularity. For one person in the middle of nowhere. I told myself, tomorrow night, I'm following him. I didn't sleep again. My mind mapped out how I'd do it, where I'd hide, how far behind I'd stay, what gear to bring. Next night, I parked 50 meters up the road, hidden behind a thick bush line, engine off. I kept only the parking lights on and covered the dash with a dark cloth. I arrived by 12:45 a.m., waiting in dead silence. My eyes flicked between the road and the glowing red numbers on my dashboard clock. At 1:19 a.m., I leaned forward, fingers tight around the steering wheel. Then, as expected, the van rolled into view. I let him pass, then gave it a 10 count before turning on my engine without headlights. I followed slowly, letting the trees cover me like curtains. My chest buzzed with adrenaline. After 5 minutes, he turned off the main road onto a narrow dirt trail. I stayed back just enough to see his taillights bouncing ahead. My tires crunched soft gravel. My breath fogged the inside of the windshield. Branches scraped the side of the car. The deeper we went, the colder it felt. Then the trees opened into a clearing, and there it was. A house, old and tall, standing in moonlight like it didn't belong there. The van parked beside a porch. The driver got out, took a crate from the back, and walked to the door like he'd done it 1,000 times. Then the door creaked open. She stepped out slowly, barefoot, wearing a long gray shawl that dragged across the floor. I couldn't see her face from where I crouched beside the cruiser, but her stillness unnerved me. The driver didn't say a word. He simply placed the crate at her feet, turned around, and started walking back. She didn't look at him. She looked past him toward me. My stomach turned. I hadn't made a sound, hadn't moved. But I swear to God, she saw me. Her eyes locked into the shadows, like she knew exactly where I stood. I felt exposed, like the jungle had stepped aside just to frame me for her. A strange chill crept up my spine. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. I could hear my own breathing in my ears. "Police," I said, trying to sound firm. My voice barely carried. She tilted her head slightly, not in surprise, but in recognition, like she had been expecting this. Then, slowly, she turned away and moved toward the back of the house. I stood up and followed, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. I rounded the porch, nothing. She was gone. No path, no sound, just vines, moss, and jungle, as if she had dissolved into the trees themselves. I called out again. Nothing. The silence pressed harder. When I circled back, the van was already pulling out. The driver looked pale, eyes fixed on the road. I flagged him with my flashlight. "She's gone," I said flatly. He gave a stiff nod and muttered, "She always does that." I asked what he meant. "I don't like coming here," he whispered, not looking at me. "I deliver, that's all." Then he drove off, tires throwing dust into the air. I stayed behind, staring at the empty house. It wasn't broken down, but it didn't look alive either. I opened my radio to call in, but I couldn't explain what I'd seen, so I stayed quiet. We came back the next morning, me and 2 officers from the city. The trail was still there. The clearing was untouched, but the house had changed. It looked older, faded. Inside, the rooms were dusty, filled with dried herbs, feathered charms, and mirrors covered in cloth. There was no food, no clothes, no meat crates, just relics. The walls had symbols carved faintly into the wood. No electricity, no signs of life. Creepy place, one officer muttered. But there was nothing criminal. Nothing to file, nothing to arrest. The house wasn't abandoned. It was just paused, like it was waiting to become something again. We sealed it with a warning notice. The meat company was real. They confirmed delivery logs, cash payments, no receipts. The driver, gone. Transferred to another district. I stayed on duty another week, but the van never returned. I stopped sleeping well. I couldn't shake the feeling she was still watching from the trees, that if I stepped out again, she'd be there, not to harm, but to see me again. And somehow, that idea felt worse than any threat, like I was now part of her story. The captain called in. My rotation was up. I was being moved back to the city. I didn't argue. I packed quietly. No one asked for a full report. I didn't offer one. Some things are better left on unfiled paper. I drove back through the jungle in daylight, but the trees still felt too close. Back in the city, things were louder, busier. But part of me never left that bridge. I sometimes think about that house, if it's still there. If the porch still holds the imprint of her bare feet, I wonder what she really was. A person? A ghost? Something older? The house wasn't haunted, it was haunting. A place that calls people in, not to trap them, but to show them something. And what she showed me still clings to the back of my mind. Quiet, patient, permanent. The official file on the incident is 2 pages long. No names, no charges, no follow-ups, just a vague note. Unusual activity observed, structure sealed. I keep a copy in my drawer. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself I didn't imagine it. Maybe to remind myself not to go looking again. Some things in this world don't want to be solved. They want to be witnessed, then left alone. So I live quietly now. I watch traffic. I write tickets. I drink more coffee than I should. But every night, whether I'm at home or in the car, I glance at the mirror. I don't know what I expect to see. Maybe a flash of pale fabric, maybe nothing, but I always look. My name is Officer Daniel Reese, and I've been with the Clearwater County Sheriff's Department for a little over 12 years. I live in the town, a quiet, slow-moving place, where most folks know your name and your routine. My usual days are filled with small disputes, traffic tickets, and sometimes the rare burglary. I work nights more often now. I've grown used to the silence, the hum of the radio, and the rhythm of lonely patrols. Some nights pass like ghosts, nothing happens. But that night started with a phone ringing in the middle of the station, and it never really stopped ringing inside my head. It was a few minutes past midnight. I was seated at my desk at the station, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. Deputy John was napping in the break room. The rest of the team had rotated out earlier. The station was dead quiet. Then the landline rang. It was sharp and sudden, like something trying to pierce the quiet. I picked up. Fairhope Sheriff's Department, Officer Reese speaking. What I heard next still sends chills down my spine. A woman's voice, fragile, desperate, whispered, "Please, don't do that. Please stop. I didn't do anything." I immediately leaned forward, straightening up in my chair. "Ma'am, are you in danger? Can you tell me where you are?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. All I could hear was shaky breathing, followed by the sound of what might have been a struggle, muffled thuds, cloth rustling, then silence. "Ma'am? Hello?" The line stayed quiet for a few seconds before disconnecting. I just sat there for a beat, heart beginning to thump. I called John in and had dispatch trace the call. The number came back as a public payphone in a rural area called Maynard, about 35 minutes east of town. We geared up and left immediately. The road to Maynard cuts through forested land, thin back roads lined with trailers and old farmhouses. We reached the intersection, where the payphone stood outside an abandoned gas station, lit only by a single flickering streetlight. The air was still. The booth itself was rusty, phone hanging crooked like someone had dropped it in a hurry. I checked the phone. It was slightly warm. Someone had used it recently. We canvassed the area. Several houses were within walking distance. We began knocking, calmly asking if anyone had made a call or seen someone distressed. Most people were confused or annoyed to be woken up. One man said he heard nothing. A woman with 3 kids said she hadn't left her house all night. Everyone claimed they knew nothing about the payphone or any screaming woman. There were a total of 7 houses within visible distance. We logged them all. The last house belonged to an elderly couple, Thomas and Margaret Heller. Mr. Heller came to the door in a robe and said he was asleep. He looked tired, maybe a little nervous, but nothing suspicious enough to press on. We left, confused. No signs, no body, no missing person report, nothing. Back at the station, I couldn't sleep. Something about that voice had etched itself into my mind. It wasn't just fear, it was final, like someone saying goodbye. Over the next few days, we kept an eye on Maynard. I returned twice, hoping to spot someone lingering near the payphone. Nothing. The surrounding houses all remained quiet. No activity worth noting. We filed a general report and kept it open under unresolved suspicious activity. But I wasn't ready to let it go. I kept returning off duty, just walking, listening, watching. About a week later, I started asking around about any new hires in that area. Housekeepers, caretakers, that sort of thing. A local store clerk mentioned a woman named Elena who worked for the Hellers. She hadn't been seen for about 10 days. She was a sweet girl, kept to herself, had this little gray cat that followed her around, the clerk said. That was the first time the name came up, Elena. No missing person report had been filed. That set off alarms in my head. I quietly asked the detectives in our department to help look deeper. Detectives Vargas and James joined me on a follow-up visit. We returned to the Heller's house during the day this time. Mr. Heller answered again. This time, he was alert, too alert. His wife sat quietly in the background, sipping tea. I asked casually about Elena. He said she had gone back to her family out of state, but when pressed for contact details, he stumbled. She didn't leave a number, just packed and left, said it was urgent. That didn't sit right with any of us. We thanked them and left without pushing harder. The walls were too well rehearsed. We regrouped back at the station. No official crime had occurred. No warrant could be obtained yet. We needed inconsistencies, contradictions, something that could justify further action. We checked hospital reports, missing persons in surrounding counties, shelters. No sign of Elena. I checked her last payroll entry, dated 2 weeks ago. No follow-up deposit. Nothing added up. I requested we set up a 48-hour surveillance, discreet, unmarked car, parked near the edge of Maynard. We took shifts, watched patterns, logged vehicle movements. Still, nothing. On the 3rd night of stakeout, I noticed something odd. Each evening around 11 p.m., a small gray cat would appear outside the Heller's gate. It would meow, pace, then sit still for hours. I didn't mention it at first. It felt like a distraction. But after 4 nights of that same pattern, I brought it up during a case meeting with Vargas and James. They stared at me for a moment, confused. "You think the cat knows something?" James asked, half joking. I answered seriously. I think the cat's the only one acting, like something's still wrong there. We pulled together every oddity we had. No missing report, no recent payroll activity. The couple's conflicting explanation. The the sudden cleaning supply purchases we saw them make, and then the cat, always returning to the same spot, like it's waiting. We laid it all out on a whiteboard. Vargas stared at it, arms folded. "We can't get a search warrant based on a cat's behavior," he muttered. But then he added, "But we can start questioning others who knew Elena. Maybe someone else heard or saw something that gives us more." We found an old neighbor who had moved 2 blocks away. She remembered hearing shouting one evening roughly 10 days ago, coming from the Hellers' backyard. She assumed it was a TV, then silence. "But I did see that poor girl's cat scratching their door the next morning," she said. That aligned with the time frame of the phone call. Now we had a timeline, an auditory witness, and a missing person never reported. That evening, we called in our supervising officer and pitched the need for a formal missing person investigation. He agreed. We filed it, and with it, an application for a limited search warrant. We were granted permission to search the property, limited to the shed and backyard, under the pretense of a welfare investigation. On Friday morning, we returned. Mr. Heller seemed irritated, his wife almost trembling. We told them it was standard procedure. They led us into the backyard reluctantly. The shed was locked. I requested he open it. Inside, paint cans, tools, and freshly moved bags of soil. A shovel leaned against the wall. One of our techs noticed fresh digging marks behind the shed, despite no new plants. We photographed everything. No digging yet, but we marked the area and left. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the dirt behind the shed. We pulled satellite scans from a local drone hobbyist's archive, surprisingly useful. A week ago, that patch of land had been untouched. Now, it had been recently turned over. We now had enough for a secondary warrant, this one for excavation. It took 48 hours, but we got it. On Monday morning, the team assembled shovels, forensics, deputies. No press. Quiet, respectful. The first few feet gave nothing. Then, one of the team members found it what looked like fabric. Then fingers. Then, a body, wrapped in a tarp. It was Elena. Forensic analysis later confirmed time of death as the same night the call was made. Cause: blunt force trauma to the head. The Hellers were arrested that evening. They denied everything. Claimed she attacked them. Claimed they panicked. But the bruising, the defensive wounds, and the way they hid her body told another story. The cat was sitting at the gate when we took them away, just watching, silent, the same way it had waited every night. Somehow, it knew. Somehow, it had refused to leave. The news didn't make national headlines, just a short column in the Fairhope Gazette about a local tragedy. But in our department, everyone felt the weight of that case. Not because it was gory or sensational, but because it had almost slipped away. Elena had died, making one final call for help. And for days, we walked past her killer's door, thinking we'd find nothing. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the caseboard. We had done our jobs, but barely. And that cat, no one really talked about it, but every one of us remembered it, the way it waited. Elena's body was returned to her family in Georgia. I spoke with her brother over the phone. He was calm, composed, and thanked us for not forgetting the voice of someone small. His words stuck with me. The cat was taken in by Deputy John. He said the animal refused to leave the house after the arrest, so he gently picked it up and took it home. Named her Echo. Fitting, I thought, because, in a way, that cat echoed the voice that first called us. It kept pointing, night after night, until we were finally ready to see what it already knew. Mr. and Mrs. Heller eventually pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Their sentence was lighter than we'd hoped, but justice, some form of it, was served. The prosecutor admitted it was a hard case to build. No clear motive, no prior abuse, no witnesses, except a frightened animal and a phone call that faded halfway through. But we did what we could. I still drive past that abandoned gas station where the payphone stands rusting under the streetlight. They haven't removed it. Some say they're waiting for funding. I don't mind. I pass by and sometimes stop not to check it, but just to sit in the cruiser with the engine off and remember that night, that voice, that moment when we were almost too late, and how a small gray cat did more than any witness ever could. She never left that gate until the truth came out. So if you ever hear a sound that doesn't fit or see something that repeats when nothing else makes sense, don't brush it off. And if you're ever the one to answer a midnight phone call, don't hang up too fast. Someone out there might only have seconds left, and they're hoping desperately that you're listening. I was lucky I answered that night. But luck isn't enough. Sometimes, justice needs more than facts.